This revolution is not going away.
This is the Ron Paul Liberty Report with Ron Paul, Daniel McAdams, and Chris Rossini.
We are all ambassadors of the Ron Paul doctrine, and it's so simple. Just tell the truth.
An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Very good. Guess what? I want to talk about money, the money they're stealing from us.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of corruption now and a lot of fraud. They're finding it out, and they have to crack down on fraud because people steal government money.
Uh-oh.
But where did the government get the money? That's what I want to know. I want to know about the stealing from the people who earned the money originally. But we're not going to talk about that today because I think our viewers would know that we're not in favor of spending a lot more money. But we have to deal with a very tough question today. What would I do if I were in Congress today? Because we have to have national defense. We have to treat our military, and we have to listen to the lobby. Oh, no, well, we wouldn't do that. But the headline, zero hedge, we want to deal with. But we shouldn't be shocked. But we want to make sure our listeners are up to date on this. And don't be overly surprised, I guess. Trump requests $88 billion supplemental funding package focused on Iran war funds, farm aid, and Ebola response. Oh, boy. You know, I think when the budget was being passed, I think we took the position there will be a supplemental.
Yep.
And because there's always a supplemental. But this is a big one. And there'll be a lot of fussing, but it will pass. But it's going to have a lot of activity because the Republicans on some issues are split. But ordinarily the threats from the executive branch of government usually control the Congress and the Senate, and they get what they want. But it's something that is perpetual. It's part of the system. It's part of why we're bankrupt, and the bankruptcy is pursued. But the bankruptcy debate and the reason for the bankruptcy, we can't do the whole history of that because in some way we were warned about this by Jefferson, and we were warned about this by many others along the way. Henry Hazlitt when we had the Bretton Woods. So there's a lot of reasons why we are bankrupt. And some people would ask me, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit, okay, but why have we done so well if we've been debasing our currency for a long time? It wasn't a perfect system. Why have we, and how did we manage to last this long? How did we end up with a lot of wealth? We still have a lot of wealth. We still have some freedom, but I think it's the biggest difference on that little debate would be what are you anticipating? What was it like before? What was intended? And what direction are we going in? And I think that's what we look at, and I think that's what people are interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, 88 billion, put that first one up. 88 billion we need to spend now because of this war that we've already gone through. And the real cost, Dr. Paul, we talked about it before the show, probably in the hundreds of billions that have been spent. But, we had $1 trillion military budget. $1 trillion. And we didn't even get one war out of that money, right? It sort of reminds me of like when you're a kid on Christmas morning and you get a super neato new toy and you go to turn it on and the batteries aren't included. We paid $1 trillion for the war, for the military, but the war was not included. You got to pay for it extra.
Yeah, but there'll be some people, but we won. You just turn on the television, and if you find a station that's favorable to the executive branch and favorable to the war, it looks like things are still perking along. But you know what? There's a sharper division and a sharper contest now from the people and the official message that we have to listen to, and especially the Fox and the News. What they give us the propaganda that when I listen to that, it doesn't sound so bad. But then I have to wake up. I said,
Yeah.
is that the way it really is? And are things that wonderful? Did we win it? Because, if you listen to the president, he sort of keeps he keeps an upbeat issue. Sometimes the only thing I notice is lately he's been a little bit quieter when he doesn't want to make a statement. But I tell you what, he's good. He's good at that, and that means that this thing will last for a longer period of time, and that means spending the money. Running a military foreign policy, that's going to continue. But I think the big issue here is just another attempt of trying to wake up people because, and you've already stated a couple of statistics, this is a lot of money, $88 billion. I imagine that used to do the whole budget. This is just a supplemental.
Yeah.
and we've already given them $1 trillion. It means that, but the thing that gets me the most is we need more money. The Pentagon needs more money. And my argument is you don't need more money. Everybody needs more value.
Yeah.
And that would take care of the grocery bills.
Yeah. So hundreds of billions. They started a war to prevent a nuclear weapon that Iran was not building. And they continued the war to open a strait that was open before the war started. So what do we get for these 88 billion or 200 billion or however much they spent? Not too much. A lot of inflation. Go to that next clip. Now this is what they're talking about. Mike Johnson, our favorite Speaker of the House, he got a letter from the administration saying they want to replenish the military stocks and address operational expenses from Operation Epic Fury. As we know, a lot of that military stock cannot be replaced. The dozens of planes and drones that were shot down to the tunes of hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, and a lot of those can't be rebuilt. Now go to the next one. Here's a breakdown, Dr. Paul, and as you remember so well from your time in Congress, when they open up the money bag, everyone wants to put their hands in. So we've got $67.1 billion for the Pentagon. We've also got $11.1 billion for those farmers. They need some money. Ebola outbreak, $1.4 billion on detection, contact tracing, surveillance, humanitarian assistance. Sounds like a scam. And another $500 million for infrastructure. Maybe some of that's going to go to fix that, those ponds, those tidal ponds that unfortunately didn't hold up well. But, Dr. Paul, when the money is flowing, everyone's got their hands out.
We see that Ebola is in there, and I don't think we're worried about Ebola in Lake Jackson at the moment.
Not at the moment.
But if we had to work it down and people were willing to work, cut here, and pinch pennies, and they could get a little bit better control on the budget. That's not going to happen. But you could argue and say, well, there's nothing too much wrong with, at least it's well intended to if a country is suffering and people are dying and we have some medical assistance that we could, you can understand why people would be moved to try to do something like that. But the whole thing is, if you do that, then it's endless. It goes. But the other thing is, we are a rich nation, even in spite of all our goofy things that we do.
Yeah.
I really do believe America is a generous nation, and I think the people are better are better than sometimes they're painted at. Because if we had a free society and a wealthy society, and even under today's circumstances, the American people still donate a lot of money to helping people and things like that. People would say, "Well, you're even against money for Ebola." Well, no, I'm not hit. But I just would collect the money differently, voluntarily. That's why I think voluntarism is a great word for talking about what liberty is all about.
And we can be sure that money is not going for some poor guy with Ebola. It's
There
going to
you go.
NGOs, it's going to managers, it's going to bureaucrats. It doesn't go to some poor guy with a disease.
Are you sure of that?
I'm being cynical. Well, they asked President Trump yesterday when he asked for that $80 billion, they said, hey, do you think America really wants to give you another $80 billion? Let's listen to the video. You want to put your earpiece in, Dr. Paul. Here was President Trump's reaction when they said, Mr. President, $80 billion. Are you sure the Americans are happy about this? Let's full screen it first. I'm not hearing any sound. See if we got some sound. I got nothing. Do you hear anything, Dr. Paul? No sound. Dang it. Hang on, let's try to get this thing going.
He's not talking.
Let's just see if we can get something out of this. Here we go. It was on mute. There we go.
Who are you with? Not a very good group. Not doing very well. Not only do they support it, they demand it because they won't allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon.
So not only do Americans support the $80 billion, Dr. Paul, they demand it. They demand it.
That settled it.
Yeah, they're demanding it. So there you go. That's straight from the president's mouth. I'm not sure that Americans do demand it, but I can tell you one thing, Dr. Paul. If you go to that next clip, Americans are feeling it big time. Do that next JPEG if you can. Key inflation gauge jumps to 3-year high in latest sign of your favorite word, Dr. Paul, affordability challenges. How do you like that as a euphemism? We are facing affordability challenges, Dr. Paul.
Yeah, simple problems, easy answer. But this has been going on. What I get interested in and try to put together is everybody's been warned about it, and yet because we have been so wealthy, they can delay it. It's sort of like a rich person whose credit remains good for a while, and even until the banks, call in their credit, then they have a big problem. Now I think that's what's happening. When you see, the system having started at $20 an ounce per gold, and they abuse the system, and then it goes up then into the thousands of dollars for it. That means that we're bankrupt. But Jefferson argued that you shouldn't have debt, and yet he lost that argument, and then when we had the Bretton Woods in 1945, Hazlitt, who was a great Austrian economist and journalist, he said, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
He says, it's not going to work because, but we had a gift. We had a gift here that has taken care of us, and that was allowing us to have the dollar and sort of forced the world, because it was in such shambles, to accept the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. That's sort of like free, that you can export your inflation, print the money and let the world use it, and there's not as much suffering. So that was a warning. Then the other great warning was, you just can't keep doing this, was 1971, when it was actually, the last vestige of the relationship of our dollar to gold was that foreigners, at least, they could trust using the dollar, because if they ever questioned the dollar, if they brought $35 to the Treasury, we would give them an ounce of gold.
Yeah.
Well, that was insane, because the real price was manyfold higher than that. So there's all the effort, all the signs of what has already happened. And right now we're going to see this. That's why I, in the short run, I'm pessimistic, but I'm still optimistic on the long run that people will wise up before it's too late. At least that's what we work for.
Absolutely. The worse the better, as Lenin said. But the other thing is, Dr. Paul, no matter how much President Trump is trying to put a positive spin on this. Yes, the Americans are demanding $80 billion be spent as long as they don't have a nuclear weapon. Well, they didn't have one, and they weren't working on one. Most Americans understand that no matter how often he repeats the lie that they were working on one. But the thing is, no matter how much of a positive spin he puts on it, Americans aren't buying it. And in fact, a new Ipsos poll came out, I think earlier this week, a couple of days ago. Military Times picked up on it. If you can put that next JPEG up, just 1 in 4 Americans believes the Iran war was worth its costs. That is bad, Dr. Paul. Go to the next one. Some 63% of Americans think it unlikely that the deal Trump signed will lead to lasting peace between the countries. About half of Republicans and 8 in 10 Democrats say the deal was unlikely to deliver peace. Just 18% of Americans, including 10% of Democrats and 34% of Republicans, see lasting peace as likely. Trump won the 24 presidential campaign election after promising to reduce inflation and keep America out of costly foreign wars. His political brand has long leaned on his background as a deal-making real estate developer and reality TV star. So basically the two things he was elected to do, unfortunately for all of us, he failed on both counts, and Americans are paying notice. That is a miserable number. Only 1 in 4 thinks it was worth it.
You know, we shouldn't be surprised that the American people are waking up to this, and they're very annoyed, but confused because they're getting different types of information trying to explain this. But when you ask the officials and some of the officials in government, yes, we might have spent $29 billion on this, and they won't admit, Trump won't admit, he didn't want to, it's worth it, to say, make sure the Iranians don't wake up and try to invade us or something. So they sort of throw that number 29 billion around. But the truth is, the people who are more honest at trying to find how much money was wasted, and it's probably over $1 trillion just wasted. But and yet it's. I think it definitely is much higher than that, because what you can't measure are all the incidentals that go along with it. What if there was somebody in this country that emphasized every single day that our foreign policy led to the death of 10,000 people? Yeah. And, oh, no, that's not true. We don't see any body bags and this sort of thing, and we're getting along. People still lend us money. But I just tell you, they will keep pestering us to keep doing this. But there are also so many problems. I used to talk about this a lot when they were using the reserve units and sending them to the Middle Eastern war. And there were so many miscellaneous payments. And my suggestion is that we should have a daily running number of everybody that has died from our foreign policy. How many bombs did, every day there must be a death from our foreign policy. But they're foreigners, but sometimes we finally grab hold of the people in Gaza. It was getting so bad that people were waking up. But the times they have stories, hospitals being blown up, and now they can target. The technology is so great. I always thought everything was an accident when they hit a building with children in. But how could there be that many accidents? What are they doing? So it's something that it's disgusting to us. We've been talking about it, but I think the people are annoyed, and it's a waste. And that statistic you just quoted from is showing that the people are getting tired of it. And let's have a national vote on whether we should vote for $88 billion thing.
Referendum.
And there were sometimes, some of the stuff in there was pretty heartwarming, that you want to do that, but it never seemed to come down hard on me in the district, thinking, well, he didn't even vote for this, so, but then they're not going to invest. They're not going to be able to do that. And they have to remember that it isn't that we're shortage of money; it's shortage of value.
Yeah.
I mean, they can print if you want to pretend the Federal Reserve note is real money. If you get the shortage of dollars, now that isn't it. It's the shortage of the dollar maintaining value, and that's what all this is. Everything from funding this $88 billion, funding the Pentagon, taking care of the sick people. All of it is based on an erroneous understanding of what money is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of money, Rubio is in the Gulf. He's meeting with the Gulf countries. He's trying to convince them to buckle up and resist this Iranian plan to charge a fee for passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Left unsaid is the fact that Iran was not trying to charge a fee before the U.S. attacked Iran. There was no fee. You just go through it, and everything was fine. So this was caused by U.S., as you say, foreign policy action. Go to that next clip. Iran still eyes multi-billion-dollar Hormuz toll scheme with China's help, as Rubio says Gulf allies won't let it happen. Now, I think he's putting words in the Gulf allies' mouth because they have been speaking with Iran and talking about a new sort of security arrangement for the region that will not include the U.S. And that's what's happening there. Now, despite Rubio's warning while meeting with the GCC allies in Bahrain, Iran is planning to move forward on charging hefty fees for vessels wishing to transit the Strait of Hormuz under its protocols. What's more is that it's seeking Beijing's approval and help. Iran's chief negotiator and parliament speaker, Mohammad Ghalibaf, asserted during a prior visit to Amman this week, everyone needs to know that management of the Strait will never return to the way it was before. Now, Rubio can pound sand and be very angry, but that is a fact. The U.S. messed this up. The U.S. has caused this to happen, and it won't return. In fact, just before we went live, a ship that was passing through without Iran's permission was struck by a rocket. We don't know who shot it, but it seems like Iran is asserting its ability to control the Strait. Now, you might say, well, that's not very fair that they're controlling it. Well, they claim that they are in territorial waters. There's less than 24 miles between Oman and Iran at the narrowest point. So technically, in terms of the law of the sea treaty, that would be territorial waters. The U.S. claims that it's international waters. It really is not for us to judge, other than the fact that other countries do in their territorial waters charge fees for passage. Turkey charges fees to pass through the Bosphorus. Panama, of course, charges to go through the canal. If you want to go through Suez, you have to pay. Now, those are contained within the country. But what Iran is asserting here is that us, together with Oman, are controlling this strait, and we're going to charge money to go through it now. Sorry, you shouldn't have invaded us. It's probably it.
And I think this is making the use of a basic principle that it can be a help in moving toward a direction of total laissez-faire economics, and that's the use of user fees. It's not a perfect answer, but we have a lot of private roads and highways already. I was always fascinated that when the Pennsylvania Turnpike was the first turnpike to be put in place, and it was put in with private money.
Yeah.
They sold bonds on it, but for our highways, why shouldn't trucks pay to be on there, more than the rest and whatever we use, and that at least would make people realize. But then they would say that would be discriminatory. Somebody would come up with an argument. We want free stuff. Yeah, we got free stuff. That's good, but you could pay for the bill when you go buy your groceries.
Yeah. Well, the backdrop to all of this is a looming energy crisis that hasn't hit yet. Now, we've all enjoyed gas prices going down. I think oil is now in the 70s, low 70s right now. But the fact of the matter is, and Trump does understand this. President Trump does understand this, which is that all of the ships that came out this week he called it a gusher, an oil gusher. They didn't come to the U.S. They all went to China and India, delivering their oil to China and India, and no new oil went in. And I saw some figures yesterday about the and we've talked about this before, our strategic petroleum reserve is actually now down further than they even understood. It looks like we have about 2 weeks left of oil. President Trump understands that. And so that's why I think a lot of people look at his threats to go back to war with Iran and realize how hollow they are. Because if you have a barrel of oil, you have to decide what to do with this. Are you going to make diesel fuel? Are you going to make gasoline? Are you going to make jet fuel? You have to make those decisions. And so if you decide to go back to war and you decide to put what little oil we have left into making jet fuel, well, you're not going to have stuff going to the stores. The trucks that carry our diesel, our Amazon's not going to come. We're not going to have food in the stores, and we're not going to be able to drive. And this is the reality that's going to hit early in July. And I don't think, honestly, Dr. Paul, I don't think people have seen the kinds of gas prices that they're going to see in a couple of weeks.
No, I wouldn't argue with that. Maybe we'll have to wait and see what date it's going to happen on, but it will happen. You know, it's been well known for many years that people argue the case that when there's free trade and free travel, people get along together, they're less likely to have armies crossing borders. And I think that's a good rule. But, you know, in the midst of all this extra spending and the failure of what happened in Iran and the unnecessary operation there, we also are dealing with, you know, other things. There is the use of the opposite of real free trade, because tariffs are used routinely, and and the Supreme Court, you have to say, are being, you know, modestly cautious about just permitting, you know, the wholesale use of the tariff. But this goes on. The tariffs are, the sanctions are there, the threats are there, the innuendos. It's all there. That's all that was all to make things smooth. But now things aren't smooth, and then you still have that. You have obstacles and things. People are unhappy, so you do it our way, or we're going to put more sanction on you. But you say, well, yeah, but if things go okay, they remove the sanctions, and you hear all about those wonderful things when when they're removed, and thinking that that's the trend that we have. But that's not in the society that we have. That's not the kind of economic policy we have. The Democrats are no better than the Republicans, because it's economic interventionism, it's welfareism, not for the poor people, not only for poor people who struggle and don't really benefit. It's the welfare state for the corporation. We live in a society that promotes corporatism, and it's doomed to fail unless they recognize this. People are frustrated with it, but they don't know what to do, because it's been enhanced. Look at all the corporatism that's going on with the current administration. I think that's a bad sign.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to close out, Dr. Paul, and thank our viewers for watching today's Liberty Report, reminding you to please hit the like button, hit the heart button, hit the thumbs up button, hit any button you can hit to help us get the show out, and we do appreciate it. Over to you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. And I, too, want to thank our viewers for tuning in today. We've had a pick up in our attendance and the people who visit our site, because I think the issues are important, and we do the best we can to dig out and find what the truth is. And I think people do want to hear the truth. And of course, the truth is none of us have perfect knowledge about truth, but there certainly is a way to tell whether you're moving toward more freedom or less freedom. Just look at the size and scope of the government expenditures, and the size and scope of the devaluation of the currency, and the size of the budget, and you'll know which direction we're going in. I want to thank you for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Thanks for watching the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Like and subscribe to help spread the message. And until next time, live free.
This country